to be amended?
So, well, first off, I haven't even come up with a law yet, because where do I need to be if I want to put this law forward? Yeah, I need to be elected to Congress. So I need to run a campaign and be elected. So let's add on another 2 years. 7 years since I first started. And my main thing is I want to change the laws around like the copying of PDF files. I think that's really important. So now we're 7 years in, and I've now been elected. Now what am I going to have to do? Yeah, I'm going to have to put forward a suggestion and get a whole bunch of people in Congress agreeing with me. And I'm going to have to get it inserted into a bill, which a bunch of people have to agree on. And say I'm like a member of the United States House of Representatives, and I come up with this bill, and I get the House of Representatives on board with it. Then we need to send it to the Senate. They have to get on board. We're talking at least another year, minimum. So it's now 8 years since I first came up with my idea of a PDF file thing. What's the worry about this? It took me 8 years to do this. Yeah, PDFs don't even exist anymore, probably, in this world. And here's the problem, is technology is changing so quickly, and our laws take a while to write and come up with. And oftentimes, if a law is at all questionable, it'll go to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court, or it'll go through the courts, and the courts will decide. And if it moves up, the court systems also move very slowly. So you have these really weird things where there was this ruling passed on what you're allowed to do with a pager that was passed in like 2013. Like 7 years after anyone gave a damn about pagers anymore. It's just the technology hadn't gone so far ahead, and they're still agreeing on what do we do with pagers. Because that's how long it takes to decide what to do about the law. And so by the time you could have a law written that would apply to a certain technology, very often the technology is out of date and nobody uses it anymore. And so it's like, oh, then why are we bothering writing laws about this? Like the amount of time it would take to come up with laws to govern what you're allowed to do with the data collected by Alexa or Google Assistant or Siri, by that point, we're on to like Siri 6.0, which is so different that none of the rules even apply. And even if we did start making laws right now, today, the people elected today wanted to make the laws, what's the next worry with it? Actually, Glenn.
I just wanted to add something to this. Law is good in the sense that it creates a precedent, and that then can be applied to different kinds of other laws and amendments. So in this regard, adding a law about pages can then lead to a different precedent with different kind of technology.
Yeah, so this is a great point, which is that very often the way the law works is we don't actually have to have a law about a particular thing. We will draw on things which have come before and judges have decided on before to draw conclusions about the new things. So for instance, if it's illegal to, let's think of a Supreme Court case recently. No, so the sorts of things though is like, here's one. There was a Supreme Court case a few years ago in which the judges deemed, so basically what happened was there was a drug deal going on. One of the guys agreed to include his handgun as part of the deal. So it's like, I will give you my gun and some money for your drugs. And it was judged by the court that this counted as using a firearm. And so he was charged as if he had shot someone with the firearm, even though he only traded it. And the Supreme Court actually found that he had used it and was punished as using it. So now that that's been judged on once, first off, I'm of the same opinion as you all that are looking at me confused, that doesn't count as using a firearm, but that's not what the Supreme Court decided. But now, the next time, say somebody like uses a firearm to not like attack someone or in a trade, but as like a doorstop, then it looks like they could point to this other case and say like, look, in this other case, they counted trading as using a firearm, so I'm gonna count using a doorstop. That's what I mean by like you point to precedent. So in this case, you might say, well, the decision they made on a pager might help us in the future make laws about, say, computers or Twitter or things like that. The issue is, with using precedent, is that as the technology changes so much and so quickly, there's no guarantee that the things we've decided on are still going to work. Like the pager decision, pagers are so fundamentally different than the modern cell phone that applying the old rules might not work. The only way we could get laws passed quickly is if the people currently in Congress decided they wanted to pass laws. And what's the problem with that? Describe, close your eyes and imagine, just like picture like the perfect version of like, just imagine U.S. Senator right now. What do they look like?
Old.
They're old, they're gray, and
They're
yeah, basically you're probably right now picturing a 65-year-old white man. A 65-year-old white man who probably does not know the most about technology. And this is the person who has the power today to pass laws. And not only that, it's probably a 65-year-old it's a 65-year-old white man who probably uses Gmail, and that's the extent of their computer knowledge. And now you're like, all right, Mr. 65-year-old, come up with how we should regulate software development and exchange. It's like, what software? What is Python? Like, oh, why are we worried about snakes? Like, this is the sort of thing that we're gonna have an issue of. And like, I bet there are members of the Senate and House today, if you told them about, like, if you said, what do you think about Python, they would only think about snakes. And Java's a type of coffee. And like, that's it. And C++ is the best grade they ever got in high school. So that's what we're talking about. So that's the issue with laws. Like, it doesn't work neatly. All right. So, what are the other ways we regulate? What are some other ways in which we regulate things? Yeah, social norms. What is a social norm? Does anyone know? Or give me an example of a social norm.
Like regulating how people behave.
Yeah, it's about regulating how people behave. And are social norms things that are written down? No, they're not. They're unwritten.
like being like a gentleman.
Yeah, there are things where it's like, they're the unwritten rules that govern our society and that we all follow. Very often, maybe not even realizing that we're following them. We generally only realize we're following them when somebody breaks them. So for instance, with a norm, why do we have norms? Why are they here? There's two main reasons. A lot of them are just because there are certain activities where as long as we're all doing it the same way, things go better. So for instance, walking down a hallway. There are norms you're following when you're walking down a hallway. What are they? Yeah, one is just don't walk into people, because like you don't want to be walked into, they don't want to be walked into, so you don't have you don't go through the halls just like checking people. That's a norm we all follow, because if we all follow it, things are better. Also, we don't want to accidentally walk into anyone, so what other rules do we have, or norms? Pardon?
Walk on the right side.
Yeah, everyone stays to the right side. Yeah, well, you've probably been doing it unintentionally, and it might just be like each person you come across, you all just slightly veer to the right. And it's not like a written thing, and no one's going to get mad at you if you don't do it. It's just generally people in the United States have a tendency to stay to the right, because as long as everyone stays slightly to the right, nobody walks face first into each other. We could also do it the other way and have everyone stay slightly to the left, or we could have no rule, and every time you approach each other, you get to play that fun game of like, up, 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 up. We all know that, where you're like coming straight up, and you move right, and they move right, and then eventually you're just like, oh, god damn it, or you walk face first into each other. I've had that happen before. For some reason, I was like 8, and this has stuck with me. It happened to me one time, and I was on roller skates, and the other person was on roller skates, and it ended exactly how you'd expect it to. We each were going like this, but of course we're on wheels, so we just rolled into each other. And that's the sort of thing that we have norms to stop.
And I was gonna say one thing I definitely will get upset if you do in the hallway is walking in a crowd.
Yeah, that's definitely, and here's the easiest way to find out what norms there are, is find out what things are not illegal, but when you find people doing them, you get furious.
Like if people are coming in the elevator, but they face the
That's a
elevator
classic
rather
one.
than,
Like how many of you, there are elevator norms. The elevator norms are, you get on the elevator, you turn around, and you face this direction, and you don't have loud, annoying conversations. And you certainly don't, if you ever want, to make everyone else uncomfortable, just get on the elevator and just, face them all like this and just, smile and see what they all do. That's a great way to violate a norm. And so, the general way with norms, part of it is to make things simpler, but another thing is just, we are social creatures. Human beings evolved to live in groups, and we are very sensitive to what other people are thinking about us at any given moment. So another reason why we follow norms is just because other people do it, so we have an impulse to follow along with them. What are some other norms that we all follow? This is just like my favorite game to play. It's just hilarious. Just think of norms, and the best way to think of norms that we follow is imagine things that like people would, like if people were to start doing this, it would make you feel uncomfortable or it would make you laugh.
I feel like one norm I feel like is kind of common now is like saying bless you after somebody.
Yeah, bless you after. That is one. It's like it is a norm to say bless you. If somebody sneezes and you say bless you, that's polite. If you stay silent and you're like the only other person, it's kind of rude. And then there are certain things which are just unacceptable to say. Like if I say wish you died, like that's not allowed. That is breaking a norm. What are some other norms that you're all following? Like you're all following at least 1,000 norms right now. What are they?
Like for escalators, it's one person per step.
That's a great one. One person per step. If you ever want a good time, stand next to a stranger on their step, and then as they go up a step, join them going up a step, and if they go down with them. Like, it's just a great way to make somebody like, this would be, I've never actually done this one, but I've seen other people do it. It's really funny. What?
Wait, forgot.
Think about.
Oh, I got it. Don't cross it on the red light, like.
That one's bordering on law.
Oh, yeah.
So these are ones that are unwritten, and nobody's actually going to arrest you if you do it, but you don't do it anyway.
Like, I think one norm that people probably, like, when you're speaking to somebody, like,
Yeah.
speaking to the person you're talking to.
Yeah, like, it would be really weird if I taught this class like this. Like, now we're going to talk about other norms. Is there what are some other norms? I can't actually see you right now, so you're just going to have to shout them out. Anyone got any other norms? I can't actually see you again. Anything? What? Yeah, if I say something you disagree with, no, I don't have the people in the back just go, boo! Or like, nobody ever just like stands up and goes, that's bullshit, and runs out of the room. Like, that's just, those are norms we follow. Or like, I keep my shoes on while I teach generally, and like all of you keep your shoes on, and if like you disagree with me, you don't pick it up and throw it at me. Like, these are all norms we follow. Great ones are subway norms. What are some subway norms we all follow or get pissed at people not following?
Don't stand on the yellow line.
So that's one, and that's like standing on the yellow line. That's more for your safety. People don't really get mad, but like here's one which we definitely have: don't push some stranger who is standing on the yellow line. That's not allowed.
That's true.
That's actually probably breaking the law because you very well might be harming them.
It's like if you have an empty seat, you don't sit next to the person that's
Yes,
already
yeah,
sitting
yeah.
down.
You don't, and also you don't. If there's like, imagine this is a subway right here. What is correct subway etiquette? If Abena is in one seat and Mo's in another one, where should I sit? Right here. So I can sit here. This is mildly acceptable, and this is unacceptable. Like if I were to sit on some stranger's lap on the subway, not allowed. Other ones, like you aren't allowed to, like there are certain rules about, and you can tell when people are breaking them. Another one, you let the old lady or the pregnant person sit. That is a norm which is sometimes respected, sometimes not. But then there are other ones like, don't lay across 7 seats during rush hour. That's another one.
Put your bag in the seat.
Yeah, put the bag, or if it's rush hour, take your bag off and hold it in front of you so you're not like whacking everyone with your bag. Also, generally there are things like, don't trim your toenails. Just general sorts of things like that. Don't spit in a stranger's face. Had that happen to me on a subway once.
You had?
Yeah, I was sitting there. It was like 11. Okay, I'll tell you the full story. I was sitting there at 11 a.m. This guy and his partner and their child gets on the train. And the child is very cute, about 5, smiles at me. I wave at him and smile back. The father was clearly either on something he shouldn't have been or off something he should have been. And looks at me, stands up, walks over, and just spits in my face. To which point, I mean, first off, the guy was like a foot taller than me. I'm not going to start fighting. It's like 11 in the morning on a Thursday. I just start cracking up. His partner, he sits back down, and his partner just smacks him. And that was totally worth it to me. I was like, that's hilarious. Yeah, that was the time I got spit on the subway. So that man broke a bunch of norms.
Yeah, just to sum summarize our philosophical points, the norms seem to be an obligation to be a reasonably decent Samaritan.
Yeah, exactly. It's about fitting in and not. And basically, if you want to know about norms, some of them are like, just don't do things which would make you stand out and make other people uncomfortable. And very often people just feel uncomfortable because you're doing something different. So like the elevator one, if everyone got on the elevator and faced this way, like we'd be totally fine about it. Or if we had rules that said like on the subway, you know, you're allowed to listen to loud. Like if everyone was allowed to bring their boombox on the subway, not that anyone actually has boomboxes anymore, but had their Bluetooth speakers, and everyone did it, we'd all be okay with it. It wouldn't count as like being rude or breaking the norms. And very often, the thing about norms is, are they the same everywhere? No. What's one of the best ways to find out that someplace has a norm is you go to the place and immediately make an ass out of yourself by breaking one of their local norms. Or like a very common one is like personal space is very different in different places. So like how far you are supposed to stand from somebody when you're having a conversation with them is very different depending on where you are. And this is why if you're talking to somebody in a different place or of a different culture, you sometimes have this really awkward moment of like, why are we so close to each other? Or I can't hear you, you are so far away. Like if I were to talk from like 6 inches in front of Avena, it would be really weird. And it'd make everyone uncomfortable, but if that was the norm, then that would be okay. You did.
Okay, going back to like the or digital world, like one norm would be like not invading other people's like business in terms of like social media or like mails.
Well, here's the issue with it, is let's now talk, what is the power behind norms? What makes you follow them? There's something very particular which is the driving force. Why is it that if you, like, say your knee hurts slightly and turning hurts, you're still, like, if you're in a little bit of physical pain and you get on the elevator, you're still not gonna stay facing this way. You'll take those 2 extra steps to turn around even if you're in pain. Why?
It's more of like subconscious. You like subconsciously, like it's rooted in you.
Yeah,
so you just
part of it is just like, it's rooted in you. But say you even like, you think like, I should do something else. What stops you?
I feel like norms kind of like, it's not about like fitting in, it's more about standing out. Like,
yeah, why is it you don't want to stand out? Like, why is it that, like, people who, like, there are also norms around what sorts of clothes we wear. And like, if I were to come and teach, there's no rule preventing me from wearing like velour sweatpants right now. And if I was wearing velour sweatpants, I'd be much more comfortable. But I don't do it because I would feel shame. I would feel like I was being judged. I would feel like I'm giving off the wrong impression to you all. And so that's the power behind norms, is it's this fear of what other people will think and the shame you might feel when you break it. And that's the driving force behind it. Now, why is it unique?
Also common sense, like in most cases, like not only he mentioned subconsciousness, but also like you know what you need to do, like when it comes to like think before you act type of situation.
And also another thing is because you're in a moment, generally like in a society, like there are certain things I know I can say right now and I know I cannot say. And I know that because I'm in a moment and I can judge your faces, I can see, I can read the audience, I can know that in a school there are certain things which are acceptable, certain things that are not. So that's the real power, and I won't do it because it's not that I think the school would punish me, it's not that I think any of you would, or like I would think that like I'd lose my job or I'd go to jail. It's just that I, as a human being, do not want other human beings looking down or judging me. So that's the power of norms. Norms are incredibly, incredibly strong. In a lot of ways, they work even better than the law for stopping people from doing things. Because you can think of many cases in which somebody is willing to break the law because peer pressure, because other people in their social group will judge them and are going like, nah, 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 you should do it. Like that's the power of a social group. And people will do things because they're so afraid. Now, why is it if we have this incredibly powerful thing, the norm, and it governs so much of our lives, why don't we just use it on the internet? What's the issue with saying, well, we don't need laws on the internet because we've got norms?
Well, I mean, I would personally say like the biggest issue is like norms are trends that society already made, but like, the internet would be like utilizing these trends to make norms. Like, so it wouldn't be the norm. It would be.
That's one big issue, is why is it that we have a lot of these norms? Well, it's because we're born into them and you just pick them up quickly. Why is it that New York City, people in New York City, what is the number one thing you know about walking?
You gotta walk fast.
Fast. You walk fast. And why is it that walking through Times Square is so obnoxious?
That's some people think that.
Because there's tourists who don't know you're supposed to walk fast and think that this is an acceptable way to walk down the street. To a New Yorker, it's obnoxious. And how did you pick that up? You've lived in New York for a while. Now, on the internet, as new technologies come along, there aren't things you are born into because the technology didn't exist. The norms have to take off. So that's one issue. And norms are very hard to like explicitly decide are going to happen. It's very often just something that kind of happens organically, and we don't really know. Like, I don't know why the like walk or the being a certain distance away is the appropriate distance in the United States. There are places in which you're supposed to stand closer, places where you're supposed to stand farther. I don't know why it is. I just know that if I get too close, I feel uncomfortable, and if I'm too far away, I feel rude.
And like on the second end of that too, it's like they're trying to predict these norms using like a formula, like rather than like quantitative, you know, like numbers that like they would like use to figure out like norms. Now they're trying to, or like they would just actually like they would just see like everybody does this way. Like they're on the internet, they would be trying to use actual calculations and predicting.
And that's part of the issue. They don't apply neat. Like they are not something that is a formula. They're just kind of there, and there's probably something which is being like there has to be something being calculated by my brain which tells me that this is the appropriate distance to stand from people. But I don't know what it is, and I would have no idea how to write a formula for someone for that. So coming up with norms for something new is almost impossible. It needs time to happen organically. So it's not like we can just come along and say, we're going to make the internet norms like this. That's not how it works. Now, what are some other issues with norms on the internet? Why is it that we don't, like, we have all of these lovely norms. Like, there are things that you do not say to people in person. There are things you don't say. Why don't we just carry those over to the internet? Why is it that if you talk to somebody in person who you hate, you're generally much nicer than you would be if you were having a text conversation with them? Or, even more, you've never met this person before in your life.
You can see they're facing it and they can answer.
Exactly. There's this sense, remember, what powers norms? Shame, sense of being judged. Well, what is true of the internet? You're behind a screen. No one knows who you are or what you look like in many cases. Why is it all these, like if somebody makes a point on the, like if, say a female public figure makes a point about, say, Donald Trump saying something this week, and they say this is like factually inaccurate, and anyone who believes this is like full of shit. What is almost certainly going to happen to this female public figure on Twitter within an hour? People are going to be retweeting it, retweeting it, and then what's going to happen? Specifically, what sorts of responses are they going to get?
Probably gonna get some automated messages from Twitter about, you know, the stuff that they're saying.
Yeah, so they say this, and then other people are going to start saying things to them. And specifically, are the things they're going to get, are they all going to be like, that was a reasoned and nice point? No, what specifically will a woman on the internet in the 21st century receive almost certainly? A rape threat. Like, if you read any public figure who is a female on the internet who has posted anything at all, you will at some point have pissed